Welcome to RHI Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today we are joined by Erica Woolham-Nichols, who has built a distinguished career in the entertainment industry, most notably through her long-standing association with the famed Bluebird Cafe. She began her journey there in 1984 as a waitress and steadily rose through the ranks to become president and general manager. Throughout her tenure, Nichols has played a pivotal role in preserving and elevating the Bluebird Cafe's legacy within the songwriting community. Her contributions have been recognized with her induction into the Nashville Songwriters Association International Hall of Fame. In addition, she produced a documentary on the Bluebird Cafe that chronicles the venue's rich history and highlights its profound impact on the careers of countless country music artists. Hey, Erica, this is such a great honor to be with you. I mean, you are a legend, clearly, in Nashville. And I know you're modest about that, but I'm really here to get your insights that you've gathered over the years of being at the Bluebird Club. But why don't you just give a brief introduction to your background and what your current role is?
Okay. Um, well, my current role is COO and general manager of Bluebird Cafe, as well as president of the corporation that runs the Bluebird. Um, and I started here as a waitress in 1984, so 2 years after the venue opened, and worked as a waitress while I was in college. Left to go home to Massachusetts, came back to Nashville to start booking a big festival here in town. It doesn't exist anymore, but happened. It was a 4-day festival in downtown. And I worked as a bartender at the Bluebird at the same time. So the Bluebird is definitely the kind of place that people come back to over and over.
Yeah. Hey,
After
I didn't know you were from Massachusetts. Where in Massachusetts?
I grew up in Acton.
Oh, yeah. I went to school in Amherst.
Oh,
I
okay.
lived in Amherst. In fact, we started RHI in Amherst. Well, that's another conversation.
um, well, and as I was working on that large festival, I transitioned to be the person that produced Tin Pan South, which is a songwriters festival here in Nashville, and went to work for the Nashville Songwriters Association International at that time. I did that for 5 years, became assistant executive director of the organization at that time, and then left to go to the Country Music Hall of Fame, where I worked on the grand opening. I was director of public programs for, I guess, 6 or 8 months, and then promoted to vice president of marketing and community outreach, which I did for 2 years there. And then returned back to the songwriting world because the job at the museum became very much, it was right as the new museum opened. Economics were a factor, and we were really, my role became very tourism oriented. And I like music. So
Mm.
I left there and went back to NSAI. And kind of from there is really where I went to grad school, still at NSAI, and ended up raising money for them. And then when Amy Kurland, who founded the Bluebird, who was my friend, roommate, and boss,
Mm.
when she decided to retire, she approached me and said, "What if NSAI took over the operations of the Bluebird so that it would always remain for songwriters rather than being sold to Coca-Cola or some other company that would potentially see a value in expanding what the venue's brand was about?" So we made that transition. I became in charge of the venue, and it worked out well in that transition because I had worked at the Bluebird for so long that a majority of the staff, if they didn't know me, they knew at least that I had worked there. And so when I came in as their boss, it was less frightening than if a stranger had come in who had no experience in the venue. So, and that was about 15 years ago. I said I'd do it
Mm.
for a year.
Well, your focus on songwriting, I think, is important. And And obviously, you are probably one of the few people in the country, if not the world, who has dedicated so much of your time to the concept of the songwriter, which we often don't think about when we listen to music. We always think that the artist performing it is the one who wrote it, and it's stories about their life, when in fact it may be the story about somebody else's life, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, so songwriting seems to be in your blood, and it seems to be the essence of the Bluebird Cafe's reputation. Um, is this something that the Bluebird really pioneered in a way, this kind of songwriters opportunity in a venue? Obviously, you've had songwriter festivals, but really just that intimate venue for the songwriters to bring forth what they did for some famous artists. Is this something unique, or do you think it's something that's spreading?
I think it started as something pretty unique. At the time, obviously, there was a much smaller songwriting community. And one of the things that that community was involved with was playing each other songs that they had written. And oftentimes at that point in time, they would get recorded, they would play them live for artists and get recorded in fast succession. And with our room, you've seen this in the documentary. When I first started here, it was really bands. Steve Earle plugged in loud. A lot of the writers here in town who really wanted to have, kind of a band presence. And it was one night that Amy had let the person who was booking the venue bring in a songwriter, what they called at the time a guitar pull, and they started trading songs. And she noticed that the room became completely enraptured by the songwriters. If you've been to our room, and I'm sure some folks maybe have that are listening here, it is 84 seats. It is tiny, it's under 2,000 square feet. And the kind of response to that acoustic music became very, very apparent that that's what this room was made for. And so Amy started targeting more of that acoustic music. And, just that focus led to several other decisions that consistently envelop the songwriting community. So yes, I think it was a very unique, unusual focus in the beginning. And then people started to see that these writers are incredible, not only artists, but they are troubadours. They are the people telling the story of our neighborhoods, our communities, our cities, ourselves. And so I think people have really responded to that opportunity to really touch the music in that way.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up that they're storytellers, and clearly you're a storyteller, because you're telling some great stories already, and we just gotten started. But for me, I think perhaps not all music or not all genres have that storytelling, backbone. But it seems like country music, more than most others, is really about stories of life and love and relationships and divorce and family and success and failure and recovery from addictions. I mean, it's just a series of stories. And as you speak, it makes me realize that perhaps that acoustic, round table, intimate room setting, people are not just listening to the song and the music like you would if you go to a concert and you're dancing, because it creates a different feel, but maybe the intimacy and listening to the words of the song kind of translates to this storytelling idea, and that the stories are actually relatable to the audience as much as it is the music. I mean, do you see that with the people who are attending these,
Definitely.
that they're basically, it's like they're listening to stories rather than they're listening to music, and those stories could relate to their own lives.
I think that's absolutely the case. And what I find in the room that the songs, yes, I mean, country music, folk music, contemporary Christian music, so much of those genres are about the lyrics. And so being able to hear the lyrics and really focus on the lyrics, I think is important and has created a point of focus in a room. But I also think that the when people come to the Bluebird, our writers are in the center of the room and Vince Gill's handing his guitar to somebody to hold it while he's getting a Coke, or one of the writers is putting their drink on a table that's right up next to them because we're all cuddled up in each other's face. Um, People get a sense of belonging
Mm,
with that. And it comes from that proximity, which I think is really important to how we deliver those stories. But it also takes away a barrier between the songwriter and the listener. And I mean, there are artists, country artists, who won't play the Bluebird and not necessarily making that, that reason public. But my take on it is that there's some people that don't like to have that distance cut, and other people love to be in relationship with the audience.
mm,
And so those are the folks that really not only tell a story through their song, but they also, in our room, tell the story of where that song came from and the story of their life that inspired them to go into a writer's room on a day that they're meeting some other folks to do their co-write and bare their soul and tell them, my wife left me or my dog died, or and they start kind of building, let's write that. Let's
mhm.
tell that story. That's happened to me too. I can contribute. And so it becomes, right from the very start, a very collective experience. And it's meant to, I think that the awareness of how that song is going to be perceived is also something that I don't think it's overt, but I think it's something that people understand. If they're telling their story, they're going to be touching somebody who also has had some kind of experience in that lane.
Well, it almost sounds like a Thanksgiving dinner that you're getting everybody together to share their stories, right?
Well, and the other piece of that that I think is worth mentioning is we have, our 86 seats, 84 seats, and their tables, and they're all different sizes. And so when people book their tickets, which they book quickly because they sell out in a minute and a half, they're seated with people they have no idea. They have never met these people. So when we seat the room, there's two people that you've seated at a six top. You bring two more people in and you make an introduction. You're like, oh, or what I do when I seat people is I'm like, oh my gosh, here's your table. It's preloaded with friends, and here are your seats. So that
Oh,
it's
wow.
already feels welcoming, that we're not just saying, go sit over there. It's more like, come here and this is your place. And I
Wow.
think that that sensibility opens the door for people to then start talking to each other. And we've had people who have come year after year after year who met at the Bluebird being seated together. And then now they come back every
Mhm.
year to meet up again. So not only are we just the stewards of a songwriting community, but we are also building community by creating relationships, both with the writers and with the people who are coming to hear those stories and songs.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're building community, and in a lot of ways I can see what you're doing, but there's so many elements, whether it be the songwriting or the storytelling or the connectivity and the intimacy that occurs from such a small space. But there's a concept, the third place. This author, Ray Oldenburg, who wrote The Great Good Place, says you got your home, you got your work and school, and then you have that third place. And that third place is where you kind of like what you're saying. You go sit down at the bar, and all of a sudden you're having conversations with people, And there's no hierarchy to it. You could have a doctor sitting next to a car mechanic, but it doesn't really matter because they're all basically there for the same purpose. And the goal is to create a community. And it sounds to me like that's what the Bluebird does is it creates a community. Is that kind of what you're saying is that it's a third place and it's a place where people know they're gonna, it's like the Cheers song, everybody knows your name. You can just walk in and you can sit at the bar and everybody can talk to you. So is that kind of like what happens when people come? Because they're not always listening to the music, they have to sit and wait for it to start, and then they have to wait for an intermission, and now they're stuck with strangers that they never met before, but they have to actually have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that that is the case. And I feel like that's really an important part of not only what happens, but how it happens. And I think people come into our room and they've worked hard to get those tickets. So they feel like a sense of achievement, right? And they have no idea what, I mean, many people, because of the television show, because of the visibility that we've gained, they don't really know what to expect. They come in, they're like, what? They're in the middle of the room. Many times people don't know that. And so, some of our job, and this is what I tell our people at the doors, our job is to help them feel less uncomfortable because it's unlike any experience they've ever had, and they're not sure, and they're meeting, it's like as we seat them, they don't know these people, and I think we're not sort of built to jump into relationship with strangers we don't really know. But to your point, they have a common focus. Sometimes they celebrate each other. We got tickets, so did we, that kind of thing. But people do come in unprepared. They come in without their shield up a lot of times because, and when I say that, what I mean is we do a lot of work with our local nonprofit hospice. If you go to a live hospice and walk through the door, you already know that you're dealing with end of life situations. So you sort of like, okay, how are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to enter that? But here, they enter as if they're just going to hear some music, you know? And watching the room transition once the music starts and the conversation starts and the drink goes on somebody's table and the songwriters speak to the audience or ask them to sing along, all of a sudden they're more vulnerable. And I think then you hear a song by the person that wrote I Can't Make You Love Me in that situation. Is not Bonnie Raitt, but it's an 80-year-old guy singing that song, and people just, they're not like, they haven't steeled themselves, so tears. And that is like the thing that I find really just interesting and wonderful is, and it's protected. You're in this room, you're included. And so you look around when you're seeing the writers in the center of the room. If you're a table across the room, I'm here. And we both hear that song and you can see the emotion. We have shared an experience that we may never speak about, may never know your name, but humanity wise, we have shared an experience that's very, very significant, I think. And I love to
Yeah.
watch that happen for people.
Boy, oh boy, you are just like a relationship builder, I mean,
Right.
you're probably even better than Match.com in terms of getting people connected. Yeah, you probably have
Well,
weddings that have come out of your
that's
little
true.
get
That has
together.
been, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the independent venue is under a lot of pressure these days, especially in urban areas where you have a lot of emphasis on growth and residential development. And, developers coming in and taking over like strip malls, like what you have, and basically using the real estate to turn it into condos.
I rise, make the
High
most of
rise.
the
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so obviously I know that Bluebird is on that targeted list. And how would you speak to the value of the independent venue in these situations? And is it possible to take the Bluebird and recreate it?
Well, I'll talk to the second part of the question first. Is, as I told you, I'm a philosophy major. So to me, when somebody brings that up, and I get maybe not a call a week, but close to that, several a month, of people, especially in the development in Nashville, it's like, well, we want to have the Bluebird. We want the Bluebird in our building, restaurant, whatever complex. Um, and and we could do an exact replica. Now, for me, simulacra. And that is something that I do not stand by. I would never do that, because the Bluebird is not about the awning or the shape or the tables, any of that. The Bluebird is about what's happened in a space, what that means to people. So when I am in the venue every night that I'm there, it does, the night doesn't go by that one of the writers says, this place matters to me. This is my favorite place. This is the place that inspired me to be a songwriter. I've seen people cry talking about what the Bluebird, that Bluebird, not the Bluebird Cafe, but that place, because you walk in that place and you can feel it. And that, Taylor or Garth or Faith Hill, all of that happened. But not only that, and I always try and just say, yes, we have those celebrity moments, but we also have years and years of songs that have been tested there, played for the first time, people taking a chance, people hearing a song and running home and writing three. There's that energy exists in that place, and you can't recreate that at all. So that, and I think to answer the part about independent venues, I really think it's the spirit of it and the connection that people make. I mean, we have several independent venues here in Nashville. We have a relationship with a venue called Third and Lindsley. When we were closed for COVID, their capacity is about 500. Their owner is a friend of mine, and we came up with this thing where we did Bluebird on Third, where we could put 125 people in their gigantic space them out, and actually run some shows. So we started doing that. Now we do a couple times a year, we do Monday lunchtime. Now, when Ron Bryce, who owns the venue, said, I think it would be great if you would come and do songwriter shows Monday at lunchtime at Third and Lindsley, I was like, who's going to come on Monday at lunchtime? Well, my friend, 2,500, no, 300 people come to those shows.
Wow.
250,
Wow.
300 on a Monday at lunchtime, just to the Bluebird name.
Yeah, yeah, you've created a brand and an experience for people, and does that experience translate well? Obviously, people enjoy it, and it's a different talking point. Hey, I had lunch and heard songwriters, and
Yes.
this ties into what I see as the evolution from a nightlife to a day life,
Yeah.
that you're seeing more venues that are beginning their shows earlier, or that they're doing daytime. Or you look at cities like Atlanta, they have espresso raves where they bring DJs into a coffee shop in the morning, and people are
Well,
dancing. So yeah, it's an evolution. Well, I could talk with you forever, and we're getting pretty close to the end, and actually we've gone over. But I think this has been a wonderful conversation, and you have so much to be proud of in your life. I mean, really, people who can find work that is their passion are really very lucky people, and it sounds to me like you're one of the luckiest people in the world.
I would agree. I would agree. And it really is all the people, all the people, and getting to watch young writers develop their skills. I will say that's one thing that the Bluebird, I believe, has a real place because we have so many people getting a start on social media. And there are a lot of people that can perform two-dimensionally. But when you have to perform for people and make that connection and really, have your craft felt, that's what the Bluebird is a really good catalyst for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Erica. It's so wonderful to meet you, and I'm so honored that you took the time.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. I look forward to it. I'm going to get a copy of the book of
Okay.
Ray's book, Ray Oldenburg.
The great good place. All right. Well, thank you very much. Bye bye.